I've seen many strange things in the emergency room, but that night what arrived wasn't just another patient. It was a question, one that no one could answer. It was around 3 a.m. when the radio call came in. Unidentified male, found unconscious on the street. No ID, no witnesses. When the ambulance pulled up, I saw him. Mid-30s maybe, covered in dust, his clothes torn and blood on his temple. His pulse was faint but steady. The paramedics said they found him lying in the middle of the road as if he had just fallen there. No signs of a crash. No skid marks, nothing. We took him in. I ordered a full trauma protocol, CT scan, labs, everything. Surprisingly, no fractures, no major internal bleeding. Just a superficial head injury and something else. When I lifted his shirt to place the ECG pads, I noticed a scar, a surgical one. Long, vertical, and recent. Whoever this man was, he'd had major surgery not long ago. Hours passed. The hum of machines filled the trauma bay, that constant, sterile rhythm that every doctor learns to live with. Beeping monitors, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights, and the quiet shuffle of nurses cleaning up after another long night. We'd stabilized him, but he hadn't moved since arrival. I was already writing the report, expecting another silent morning in the ICU. Then, just as the nurses were preparing to move him to observation, a sudden gasp broke the stillness. He opened his eyes, not slowly, as if waking from a dream, but all at once, like someone surfacing from deep underwater. His chest heaved, his pupils dilated wide. His hands gripped the sheet as if trying to hold on to reality itself. At first, he just stared at the ceiling, breathing fast. Sweat glistened on his forehead. His pulse monitor spiked erratically. I approached him carefully. "Sir, can you hear me?" His head turned toward my voice, movements stiff and mechanical, as though even that simple act took effort. "Where am I?" he whispered, his voice dry, trembling. "You're at St. Clair Hospital," I said gently. "You were found unconscious on the street?" "You're safe now." The word safe made him flinch. He tried to sit up, panic flashing in his eyes. His breathing turned shallow, desperate. "I don't remember anything," he said, voice cracking. "Not my name. Not how I got here." I placed a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. "Take it slow," I said. "You've had some kind of trauma, but you're going to be okay." He shook his head weakly. "No, it's not that kind of forgetting." "What do you mean?" I asked. He stared straight ahead, eyes glassy like he was looking through the wall, seeing something I couldn't. "It's like I'm missing pieces," he murmured. "Not memories, pieces. Like parts of me are gone." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Amnesia can happen, sure, after trauma, severe stress, or medication reactions. But in his case, the scans showed no brain damage. None, no swelling. No lesions. Nothing that explained why his identity had vanished. When I asked if he remembered any faces, any sounds, any city, he just shook his head. Then, almost in tears, he said something that made my stomach tighten. "I feel like someone's looking for me," he whispered. "I just don't know who." His tone wasn't fearful, it was haunted. Like someone who knew they were being watched but couldn't remember why. We admitted him under the name John Doe. But as I signed the chart, a strange feeling crept over me. As if the man lying in that bed wasn't just lost, but missing from somewhere he was never supposed to leave. Over the next few days, I tried to piece together his life like a puzzle with all the corner pieces missing. He barely spoke. Most of the time, he stared at the ceiling, tracing invisible patterns in the air, as if trying to remember shapes that no longer existed in his mind. The surgical scar was my first real clue. It ran from just below his sternum to his navel, clean, professional, and recent. Whoever had done it knew what they were doing. But there was something odd about it. The edges were smooth, too smooth, almost as if it had been made with a laser scalpel. I checked every hospital database I could access, from local records to out-of-state systems. No recent surgery matched his description. No missing patients. No transfers. It was as if he'd been operated on in a place that didn't officially exist. Then came the blood results. They showed traces of tacrolimus, an immunosuppressant typically used in organ transplant patients. But his imaging didn't fit any standard post-transplant anatomy. Heart? Perfect. Kidneys? Both intact. Liver, lungs, pancreas, all untouched. So what was his body trying not to reject? At one point, even though the lab had made a mistake, I ordered a repeat test. Same result. Tacrolimus at therapeutic levels. Someone had been maintaining that dosage for weeks before he collapsed, and that's when I found something else. It was early morning. I was adjusting his IV when I noticed faint blue ink on his left hand. At first, I thought it was a pen mark from the paramedics, but when I looked closer, I realized it was something else. Numbers, half faded under his skin. The number 4271. He said he didn't know what it meant. His voice trembled when he said it, but there was something in his eyes, like part of him did know and didn't want to remember. That number haunted me. I wrote it on a sticky note and kept it in my coat pocket. It felt like a code, a tag, something deliberately left behind. That night, I started digging. I accessed every system I could, hospital registries, donor databases, surgical logs. Nothing. He didn't exist in any official record. Then, out of frustration, I accessed an old research database we used for inter-hospital trials. Most of the projects there were canceled or outdated. But as I scrolled through, something caught my eye, a login prompt with a warning, restricted access, experimental data only. I shouldn't have gone further. But I did. After a few tries, one of my old credentials worked. Inside, there was a list of study codes, all marked terminated, and among them, patient 4271. The file wasn't long. Male participant. Approximate age, 34. Study, neuroregenerative implant. Phase 2. Location, research facility, Pasadena. The notes were clinical. Detached, but a few lines made my blood run cold. Subject. Displayed episodic memory loss within 72 hours. Post-implantation. Uncontrolled. Sympathetic responses during recall stimulation. Experiment. Suspended following 3 adverse events. Adverse events. That's how researchers say something went terribly wrong. The file ended abruptly. No follow-up. No death certificate. No transfer record. Just the word terminated in red. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. The facility was less than 10 miles from where he'd been found. Was it coincidence or had he escaped from there? The next morning, I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. When I entered his room, he was awake, staring at the sunlight hitting the curtain. "John," I said softly, "I think I know where you came from." He turned slowly, eyes wary. "Where? Do you remember undergoing a medical trial? Something involving your brain?" He blinked rapidly, his expression tightening as if something inside his mind was pushing against invisible walls. I remember a white room," he murmured. "Bright lights, cold air, and voices. They said they could help me remember who I was." He pressed his hands to his temples. "But something went wrong. I can hear them sometimes still, like static." Before I could say anything, the cardiac monitor beside him began to beep erratically, heart rate spiking. "Oxygen levels plummeting," he gasped, eyes wide with terror. "They'll come back for me," he whispered. "They don't want me to remember." And then he seized my wrist with an unnatural strength, nails digging into my skin. For a second, the monitor flatlined, then suddenly returned to normal. He collapsed back onto the bed, unconscious. When I looked down at my wrist, there was a faint blue smudge where his fingers had pressed, the same ink as the number on his hand, 4271. When he lost consciousness, the room fell into a chilling silence. Only the soft hum of the machines filled the air, like an electronic heartbeat that didn't belong to him. I called for a nurse, but before she arrived, the monitor flashed, a brief line of code across the screen. Not numbers, not vitals. It was text, Signal interrupted. "Reconnect sequence," then it vanished. I stared at the monitor, frozen. Hospital machines don't display messages like that, ever. When the nurse walked in, I asked if she'd noticed anything strange. She looked at me blankly. "Doctor, the system's offline. It's not even recording." I looked back at the monitor. The message was gone, replaced by a normal rhythm strip. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the word signal. Was something transmitting to him or from him? I went back to the Helix research file I'd found earlier. This time, I opened the attachments. There were encrypted logs of neural data, graphs of brainwave activity tagged with timestamps. But one line of text stood out, buried in the metadata. Implant model, HN3. Connectivity, remote sync enabled. Remote sync. They weren't just restoring memory. They were controlling it. My pulse quickened as I read on. The last entry from 2 months ago said, Subject 4271 shows resistance to synchronization protocol. Immediate extraction recommended. Extraction. The word chilled me. It didn't sound medical. It sounded military. The next day, when I arrived at the hospital, something felt off. Security was tighter. 2 men in suits stood near the ER entrance, talking to administration. Their badges weren't from any agency I recognized. When I walked past them, one of them glanced at my ID. Dr. Collins, he said, we'd like to speak with you about a patient admitted 3 days ago. A John Doe. I felt my throat tighten. He's in intensive care, I said carefully. Why? Just a routine follow-up, the man replied, but his tone was too smooth, too rehearsed. His partner was already scanning the hallway looking for cameras. I stalled them. Let me check with my supervisor first. Then I walked straight to John's room. It was empty. The bed was stripped, the machines turned off. Only the faint indent on the pillow remained. According to the night nurse, 2 people from medical transport had come for him at dawn. No paperwork, no transfer order. I went to the main desk. No ambulance recorded, no call, no authorization. It was as if he'd vanished into thin air. Again. I felt anger rise in my chest. Someone was covering this up. I went back to my office, pulled out the sticky note with 4271 written on it, and logged into the lab database one last time. But this time the entire project file was gone, deleted. I scrolled through old cache data, trying to recover fragments. And I found something, a single image thumbnail. When I opened it, my breath caught. It was him, John, lying on an operating table, electrodes covering his head, his chest open to a web of glowing circuits. Not wires, not standard implants, something finer, almost biological. Under the photo, a caption, neural host integration successful. Memory suppression active. I closed the laptop, hands trembling. All this time, I thought he was trying to remember his past. But what if his mind had been erased on purpose? Maybe he wasn't running from anyone. Maybe he was the experiment itself, the one that wasn't supposed to survive. That night, I stayed late in the ER, staring at the empty bed. A faint static came from the cardiac monitor beside it, even though it was unplugged. Then, through the static, I heard a voice, faint, distorted, but unmistakable. Don't look for me, doctor. They'll erase you too. The static stopped. The screen went dark. I stood there, my heart pounding in my ears, and then I saw it, on the corner of the monitor, faint and flickering. 4271 medicine teaches us to look for logic, for patterns, for cause and effect, but sometimes there's no science left. Just silence, and the feeling that somewhere out there, someone is still watching, waiting for you to remember what you were never meant to know. Maybe he was right. Maybe some memories aren't meant to come back. But tell me, if you woke up one day with no memory of who you were, would you want to know the truth? Let me know your answer in the comments. I read every single one, and if this story gave you chills, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next mystery waiting in the dark. Because in the world of medicine, not every story has a cure.